This video is going to be on topic 7e, solving quadratics by completing the square. So completing the square is a lot of very, very specific steps that must be done in order, but it's a kind of cool way of forcing a perfect square trinomial, which was a certain way of factoring that we learned at the beginning of this unit. So we always force the perfect square trinomial by completing the square. Step 1 is to put your equation in the form of ax squared plus bx equals the constant. So for example 1 here, that means we want this negative 20 to be on the right side. So we're going to make it x squared minus 8x equals positive 20, because we can't just like move it willy-nilly. We have to really add that 20 to both sides. Step 2 is to then divide all parts by the coefficient of x squared. So there's no coefficient in this equation, so it's kind of nice. We don't have to worry about that. So I'm just going to rewrite it because it's good to go. And now this next part is where we complete the square. We are going to take half of b, so b is that middle term, your negative 8. We're going to take it in half, so negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4, and then square it, and that is going to be 16. So that is our square that we're going to complete. So we force this perfect square trinomial by taking half of b and squaring it. And we're going to add that to both sides. So we can't just put it on the left side and force that perfect square trinomial there. We have to add 16 on both sides. That's what keeps things equal. Now because we made this a perfect square trinomial, the left side here, x squared minus 8x plus 16, is going to factor, and it's going to factor perfectly. We want something that multiplies to be positive 16 and adds to be negative 8. That's going to be x minus 4 times x minus 4. And remember, that means we can write it like x minus 4 squared. And that is equal to positive 36, because I combined my like terms. Next step is to take the square root of both sides. And when we take the square root, we always plus or minus. And then we're going to get x by itself. So I have x minus 4 equals positive 6, and x minus 4 equals negative 6. So when I go to add 4 to both sides, we'll have the version where it was positive 6 plus 4, which is 10. And we have the version where it was negative 6 plus 4, which is negative 2. So those are our two answers. The biggest thing that people forget is how to get that middle half of b and squaring it. So you just have to memorize that. That's why it's in gray. And then the other thing that people forget is the plus or minus. So don't ever forget the plus or minus. We should have pretty much two answers to most quadratics. So example number 2, let's follow these steps again. We are going to get the constant over to the right side. So we're going to get 3x squared plus 18x equals 45. And now we want to divide all the parts by that constant. So if we can, we want to divide it everywhere. If we can't just divide everything by that, then we kind of have to factor it out. But it looks like we can actually divide both sides by 3. So if I divide both sides by 3, this is still going to be nice whole numbers, and it's going to work out pretty well. Next thing we want to do is find our completed square. So we're going to take b, divide it by 2, which would be 3, and then square it, which is going to be 9. So now our new equation is x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 15 plus 9. So I add that to both sides. Now we factor the left, and it's going to be that perfect square trinomial. And on the right, we're going to get a 24. Take the square root of both sides. So x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 24. And right now we're going to take some time to simplify this. So that's going to be 4 and 6, 2 and 3, 2 and 2. So I got a pair of 2's that can come out. Then I subtract 3 on both sides. So we get x equals negative 3 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 6, because that's going to be your 6 here. That's still inside of the square root, but one of the 2's can come out. And because we're going to have that radical, that irrational number here, the square root of 6, we're just going to leave it like this. You don't need to split it up with the plus or minus. You can just make it this one piece right here that's saying two different answers. So number 12, all we're going to do is say, what does c have to be? If we're going to complete the square, c has to be half of b squared. So you take your b, you divide it by 2, and you square it. So that means we're going to take half of negative 6, which is negative 3, and we square it, so c is 9. Done. Go ahead and try this next one right here. Did you get 49 over 4? This one's kind of funky. If we take 7 divided by 2 and square it, you're going to get this awful fraction. So completing the square isn't always the best method to solving a quadratic, but it is a method, and sometimes it is a good method. Alright, number 13. We want to solve by completing the square. I want you to try both of these guys right here and come back in a few minutes and check out the answers. Alright, so these are our final answers for both of these completing the square problems, and we are done.